Let's talk about a skill that, honestly, most leaders kinda overlook, but it might just be the single most important factor for success. I'm talking about emotional intelligence. And trust me, it's not some fluffy soft skill. It's a serious competitive edge.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Have you ever made a call in the heat of the moment that you kicked yourself for later? Or maybe you just felt a bad mood creeping into your work, coloring how you see things. The reality is, our emotions are always in the driver's seat, whether we notice them or not.
Okay, you have to see this. This study is just wow. A full letter grade difference. Not because the essay was different, but just because of the teacher's mood. But here's the real kicker. Most of them had no clue what was happening. They thought they were being totally objective. That's the danger, right? It's this invisible force that can sabotage our best efforts.
So if our own emotions can be this kind of secret saboteur, what do we do? How do we fight back? Well, it turns out there's a specific skill set for that. Let's really define the tool that solves this exact problem: emotional intelligence.
At its core, it's pretty simple. The researchers who came up with it, Saldivar and Mayer, defined it just like this. Emotional intelligence, or EI for short, is all about being able to read the room, and that includes the room inside your own head, and then using what you learn to navigate situations better. And you can break it down into three main jobs. First, you gotta have the awareness to actually identify what you're feeling. Then you have to be smart enough to harness that feeling and point it at a task like problem solving. And finally, you need the discipline to manage it, so your emotions are working for you, not against you. Okay, so why is this such a big deal for leaders? I mean, you can have the most brilliant strategy in the world, but if you don't have this piece, it can all fall apart. Let's look at how this plays out where it really counts, at work.
You know how they say a leader's mood sets the tone? Well, it's literally contagious. If you walk in stressed, your whole team feels it. But if you can build what's called psychological safety, basically an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to fail, to ask dumb questions, that's where high performance comes from. And that feeling of safety? It comes directly from a leader's emotional intelligence.
And it's not just about team vibes. It directly impacts the quality of your decisions. A leader with high EI knows that their feelings are data, not directions. They have that self-awareness to say, you know what, I'm too fired up right now to make this call. They can cut through the emotional noise and hear what's actually important, especially when the pressure's on.
Really, it all boils down to this one critical shift in your mindset. You've got to move from that old school thinking that emotions are a weakness you need to stuff down and start seeing them as a rich source of data you can use to be a way more effective leader.
Now, this all sounds great, right? But the big question is, how do you actually get better at it? Well, the great news is that EI isn't something you're just born with. It is absolutely a skill you can build. So let's get practical and walk through a framework you can start using, like today.
This little tool is called RULER, and it comes from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. It's a simple 5-step checklist. First, recognize what you're feeling. Understand why you're feeling it. Then, label it with a specific word, because saying you're stressed isn't as helpful as knowing you're overwhelmed or anxious. Then you express it, but strategically. And finally, you regulate it to make sure your response actually helps you meet your goals. So where do you start? Start small. Before you jump into a big meeting, just take 10 seconds and do a quick mood check. Where are you at? And try using that RULR framework in low-stakes situations first, with your friends or family, before you take it into the boardroom. Oh, and just watch leaders you admire. Pay attention to how they handle the tough stuff. Then, for the long haul, it's about building habits. Get brave and ask people you trust for feedback on how you show up emotionally. Work on building your emotional vocabulary. And this is a big one. You have to recognize that managing emotions takes energy. You need to build in time to recover and recharge. You're not a robot. You're a human who needs maintenance. But I know what some of you might be thinking. Okay, this all sounds good, but is it, real science? That's a totally fair question. And there's a real debate going on in the psychology world about whether EI is a legit, measurable thing, or if it's just a popular buzzword. So, to be transparent, here are the main critiques. Unlike IQ, there's no single, universally agreed upon test for EQ. And some scientists argue that what we're calling emotional intelligence is really just a mashup of other personality traits we already know about, like being charismatic or agreeable. So the debate on how to perfectly measure it is definitely still happening. But here's the thing. Even with that academic debate going on, in the real world, the verdict is pretty clear. All the technical skills you have, your strategic genius, your fancy degrees, that's just table stakes. That's the price of admission to get you in the game. Because what separates the good leaders from the truly great ones, what really makes the difference, is the ability to skillfully work with the human side of things. It's about understanding what makes people tick, knowing how to motivate them, and navigating the messy, complicated emotional currents that run through every single team. So what's the bottom line here? Your technical skills get you hired, but your emotional intelligence is what gets you promoted. It is your real competitive advantage. And the best part of all, it's not fixed. It is a skill. And it's a skill you can start building today, one conversation at a time.